Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We are going to do intros a little bit more in depth later, but for now, my name is Nikita Longman.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline.
And before we get started, Jacqueline's going to introduce a very special guest that we're very grateful to have with us here today.
Yeah, joining us today is Elder Robbie Hong. Elder Robbie actually joined us for one of our events at Luma Medical Center back in August. And Robbie is here to just start our session off in a good way with open hearts and open minds. So I'm going to pass it off to Robbie.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Robert Hong. I'm also known as Double Rainbow Man. That's my spirit name. I'm the ED chief of the Four Feathered Society, and also I've been working in the Two Spirit community in Vancouver since before 2004. So I just want to acknowledge where the territory that I'm on Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam Nation in Vancouver. And I I just want to say hello to all you beautiful spirits out there right now, all you people joining us, and discovering yourself, and discovering what wellness is for you, right? What's your greatest potential? And I was invited to sing a song, but I don't think those translate very well on Zoom from my own experiences watching people sing songs. But I also was asked if I could also share on what it means to be two spirit. I also was, one of the things I was also asked was to make sure that I ask everybody to, with the presentations happening, to have an open mind, an open heart, and to celebrate more than anything, celebrate the work that the youth have done to redevelop the programs that they're offering. So two spirit. So as a youth, when I was 11, I had some trauma, a sexual trauma when I was 11. And as I got older, it really became difficult to understand what sexual health is and what my identity is. It tainted everything. And when I was 26, I got sober. And part of getting sober was having to do that kind of work. And as a gay, I identified as a gay man back then, but I see myself as more non-binary right now. And that I see myself as not gender neutral, is the term I used to use before non-binary came along, right? Because I didn't see myself as a man or a woman. I saw myself as the other. And I didn't understand that because in our communities, I really didn't have that. There was just so much black and white. And our two-spirit community has been very traumatized. And I didn't even know what a two-spirit person was back then. And I got sober, and somebody introduced me to the concept of the word two-spirit. And I read a book, Spirit in the Flesh. And it really made me understand that I don't have to fit into a binary system. And before colonization, there was 100 million people in all the Americas, South and North America. And and on this territory I stand on right now, there was room for us to be different. In fact, it was encouraged to be different. And we use the word gender, but that's not the words they used back then. These are all English words, and homosexuality is an English word. It's actually a new word, even in English. But they had a room, we belonged, and they had roles for us. As much as they had roles for women and they had roles for men, they had roles for two people who were different. And they kind of measured that differently than what we see today. But they had space for us, and they didn't make us conform. And not everybody had teachings like, but 95% of the people had some kind of teachings around us, and acceptance of from what has been what they can understand now. So it's like, yeah, when I read it, and I understood that I had gifts. And one of those things is, we were seen as knowledge keepers, and we were seen as medicine people. And because they felt that we were more in tune to what we call today as intuition, and be able to speak to the spirit world a little bit clearer, because we had a balance between the male and female energies, right? And what they call medicines within ourselves. And so when I got sober, the first thing that happened to me, the Creator brought me the smudge bowl. And I had never smudged before, and I didn't have much of a native identity, because that was something that my mother had hidden from us, because she could. But her mother was First Nations, but she had a very bad experience with her mother, because she, like many people's mothers, have had addiction problems, and she didn't. Her mother was in and out of her life, but so she kind of hid that. So part of my identity is finding out recovery is finding out I was First Nations, because my mother, when she saw me pick up the smudge bell, she started talking and healing through me, watching me grow and dealing with some of the traumas that happened to me, so I could have a healthier sexuality about myself and see myself. I didn't like myself, and that made it very hard with my sexual health, because I wasn't worth much, and I was constantly trying to give myself away in order to feel loved, because I didn't feel the love of myself. And that's part of my story, is learning to be able to look in the mirror, look myself in the eye, and say, I love you. You got gifts. You're a good person. I could comb my hair, I could do all that, but I could not say those words. In fact, when I first tried doing that as part of my recovery, it brought me to tears. And it felt empty at first, but it grew. The light, what was so dim inside me, started to grow. But it was always there. It never went out. It started to grow. And part of my recovery is the Creator started asking me and providing me the teachings, the tools. And now I actually run a sweat lodge in North Van. I've been invited to many medicine circles to do different things. I work traditionally with plant medicines now. That's the things that feed myself. Those are the gifts I am given, that those are the things I am here for. But I had to discover all those things. And when I was drugging and using drugs and substance abusing and hurting myself in many different ways, I was very close to all those things. And I didn't have time. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't focus. I felt very unworthy. But, part of my journey, and I'm 63 now, 3 years now, working on that and going down that road. But it also, when I started going down that road, there's things I had to give up, because I people start seeing me, and they start seeing you, you're a mentor. And when you're a mentor, there's certain things you have to be willing to give up, certain ways and certain things, in order for you to be a better knowledge keeper, right? But that's part of that was my journey, and I've had many rewards come to me from doing that. So it's not so much as giving up, but it's more gaining things. I get much more by letting some of the little things that I do, like language or spending times doing things that, really don't feed me, right? So we have to figure out what that is. Everybody has to figure out what that is for yourself. But do more of what makes you happy. That's all I have to say. Do more what really makes you truly happy, and let go of the things that have told you that this doesn't make me happy. But if it makes you happy, do more of that and less of the things that make you unhappy in the next day or whatever, or there's consequences you don't want. But there's more you do things that make you happy, the more times you stand up for yourself, the more times you learn to appreciate who you are and value who you are, the more you're going to enjoy life and more stable you're going to become and everything that you do. And the more you're going to be able to reach your potential faster. And I think that's about all I have to share today.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you, Robbie. Really appreciate your words. Those are beautiful words.
And thanks for being with us on this journey. You, like Jacqueline was mentioning, you joined us at Luma, and so you've sort of dabbled with us in this work along the way, and your guidance has been very crucial in helping us along with this project. So, miigwech.
It's been my pleasure, and I'm really glad that you're doing the work you're doing. Both of you seem like that's your gift, that's your potential, that's what makes you happy.
Thanks. All right, I would like to thank everybody else who is joining us and who is watching and who will watch on a later date on our YouTube channel, just to get a sense of the work that we've been doing. So we are gathering here today to share some of the incredible knowledge that we were able to gain and grab and work with over the past year with generous funding from the Health Canada grant that we received. We were able to work with so many incredible and wise youth that shared so much knowledge with us, and we just can't keep it to ourselves. We're excited to share it with you and give you a little bit of a glimpse into some of the incredible wisdom that we were all able to get over the past year. So we do have a slideshow for you that we'll be sharing. Great. So yes, welcome to Renewing Our Understanding of Sexual and Reproductive Health. Jacqueline and I will be your hosts for today, but we're also so excited to have two special guests, Brielle Beardy-Linklater and Feather Talia, who we will introduce and bring up very soon. But first, we just wanted to give you a little bit of a background on the work that we do. So let's look at how we'll spend the next little bit together. Here's the agenda we've created and how we'll spend our time together today. We'll do a little bit more introductions of who we are. We also want to give a shout out and introduce the Indigenous Youth Wellness Team, who have been so crucial in being a home base for us and holding us well in this work. We'll also go over the Sexual Reproductive Health Grant that we received. And we'll also look into some of the areas of focus that we all decided to zone in on a little bit more and engage the youth with. We'll go over the communities we've visited. We were so lucky to be able to visit so many great communities across the province. And by doing so, we met some incredible people. So we want to highlight some of the people we met along the way. We want to share a very, very surface level examples of some of the things that we heard from the youth. Of course, we could never get into the depth of knowledge that we gained over the last year, but we'll share some high level info with you. And then we'll get to the question and answer period with Feather and Brielle. And then we have a couple closing notes to share with you as well. So for introductions, again, my name is Nikita Longman. My pronouns are she, her, and I was invited on the team as a curriculum developer. I am a Saulteaux woman with French background, and I'm a member of the George Gordon First Nation and Treaty 4 territory. I currently live in Winnipeg, and today I'm joining you from so-called Vancouver, BC.
Yeah, and my name is Jacqueline. I am a project coordinator on the Indigenous Youth Wellness team. My family is Statliam, and we come from the Haklip First Nation. And I currently reside on Coquitlam territory and also calling in from so-called Vancouver.
So some other key players that we had the privilege of working with over the course of the grant. We worked with Sam Saruda. Sam was the program manager with us.
We had Justin Ducharme, our cinematographer.
We worked with the incredible Amy Jackson, also known as Native Love Notes on Instagram. You should give her a follow. She was our graphic designer. You'll see some of her work sprinkled out throughout our presentation today.
And we have Erin Reed, our sexual educator, who was kind of along with us throughout the entire journey, but especially up in Haida Gwaii.
We worked with Holly Reed, who contributed a lot of content that we've incorporated into the training sessions, and Holly also helped us facilitate. So they played a couple roles, wore a couple hats.
And finally, we had Laura with us. Laura was a counselor that joined us on our events just to help support the youth and attendees. Yeah. And then, of course, our work was not done by just our team. It was done by Indigenous Youth Wellness as a whole. So we have a big, massive team here. Maybe I'll just go through and just name all of our team members. We have Queese Hamilton, Are starting from the left and going right at the top. We have Queese Hamilton, Naomi Bob, our elder, Jerry Ullman, there's me, and then beside me is Jordan Robinson, Grace Wells, Tristan Westman, Nikita, Jacob Knudsen, and Gabby Emery.
So all of these folks in one way or another helped us out, whether it was tabling events, packing up swag, helping us find spaces, driving with us, just support in all kinds of ways, social media, you name it. So everyone played a role at some point.
Yes. And maybe I will just jump right into kind of Indigenous youth wellness as a whole. So Indigenous youth wellness exists under the greater umbrella of Provincial Health Services Authority. Each of our team members contributed at some point. Oh, sorry, I was reading the wrong thing. We offer a variety of programming for Indigenous youth across BC. Yeah, and I'll just jump right into the programs. I kind of wanted to highlight kind of the three biggest deliverables we have through Indigenous youth wellness. One of them being Culture Bites. Culture Bites is an online series that educates viewers about nutrition and shares healthy recipes by focusing on traditional food and harvests. It offers rural and remote youth accessible information about their health and wellness, and it provides a way for urban youth to connect to traditions that they aren't able to participate in. An example of a Culture Bites event that we did recently was we actually had the opportunity to work with Eat Wild and do a deer butchery workshop for urban Indigenous youth, and that was really awesome. We also have lots of videos where we kind of highlight Indigenous ingredients and cooking and traditions and stories. One of them being Saskatoon berry pie. We did venison nachos with Mr. Bannock once. That was really fun. And then next to Culture Bites, we have Teachings in the Air. Teachings in the Air is a podcast hosted by our elder, Jerry Ullman. Teachings in the Air focuses on health and wellness, specifically the importance of the mind, body, the spirit, and the heart. Jerry has guests on the show that speak on their experiences and their journeys through healing. And we also offer a variety of programs and workshops throughout the year. One of them actually coming up, we are going to be at Gathering Our Voices, and we're holding some workshops there. One, I think, on podcasting, if you're interested, and if you're going to Gov, we're doing that. Another one we're doing is making quarter bags. We've also done a bunch of virtual events like virtual beading, virtual cedar weaving. We actually mailed out the items for our participants to join us virtually throughout, I think, Canada, which is really awesome. Yeah, we also do some online giveaways. I think not too long ago, we were able to give away a bunch of skateboards designed by Indigenous artists, which was really cool. So please check us out on Instagram at Indigenous Youth Wellness if you're interested in any of these events. They're all free. Yeah.
Great. And another service and program that Indigenous Youth Wellness offers, which absolutely was where we spent all of our work really with this grant, was through Cuystwi and Ask Auntie. These are Indigenous Youth Wellness online programs that people can bring into their communities and facilitate with youth. So what they currently are Indigenous youth culturally based wellness programs that promote wellness, cultural continuity, sexual health education, and there's introductions on topics such as colonization and how it affects our ability to stay well. They were developed with input from youth across BC in response to unacceptably high suicide rates, incidents of violence, including sexual abuse, and the lack of culturally relevant violence prevention programs for Indigenous youth. So a little bit of background context on this as well. These were originally created basically a decade ago. And so it was our task. It was up to us to know that a lot has changed. We've learned a lot of language since then. There's a lot of new terms and terminology and the way that people identify and the way that people relate to one another in community. So it was essentially our job to really tune this up and bring it up to date. So it is still culturally relevant, and it is applicable to youth that will be accessing the program. So that leads us directly into this grant that we were so grateful to receive through Health Canada. They specifically asked us to focus on sexual and reproductive health, which feels like a large topic, and it is, but it was, you know, we did decide to narrow in, so we'll get to that a little bit later. But one of the things they asked for us to do was to absolutely make sure we were including a lot more updates and knowledge around 2S LGBTQQIA+. We also always do, whether it's through a grant or not, approach this work through a community-based approach. And we also really wanted to prioritize ensuring that we were working with youth in a reciprocal manner and not an extractive way. So it was big priority for us to take a lot of care, show them a lot of love through honoraria for sharing their knowledge with us. We fed them some of the best meals I've had on my trips to BC. I'm thinking about that taco bar in Haida Gwaii. You can see in this middle picture, we just like shower them in swag. IYW has a ton of great swag. And yeah, so we really wanted to make them feel held well by us, and also very safe when we were engaging with their work. Another unique approach that we applied to is, I think, especially in institutional settings, we can often really lean towards doctors and people with PhDs and academics as being experts in the field. And that's easy to do, but what we really wanted to do is sort of tip that notion on its side and center the youth as the experts in what it is they need to see in an update in sexual and reproductive health, particularly with the hope and end goal that it will effectively meet their needs and also empower them when they are seeking out sexual and reproductive health wellness.
All right.
So to those 4 areas of topic, because it is such a wide range, and again, shout out to Amy, our graphic designer. These are some of the cute graphics she made for us in this project. So we went into community with these 4 topics at the top of our brains. We really wanted, as requested by the Health Canada grant, and just a priority for us as well, we really wanted to center and update knowledge around 2S LGBTQQIA+ identity. We know that acronym has changed so many times already in the past couple of years. So we really want to bring everybody up with us on the ways we talk and relate about that identity. We also know there's been a lot of changing in wellness and care around menstruation. We wanted to bring that up to date as well. We know that consent and boundaries have been a big area of focus in our communities lately, and we also wanted to make sure that we were equipping youth with some knowledge around that as well. And what we used to refer to as STIs, we're now more formally calling sexually transmitted and blood-borne infections, or STBBIs. So we wanted to also make sure youth were up to date and taking good care in that world as well.
Yeah, so kind of jumping into what we heard from the youth during our facilitated events. We're just going to touch on kind of like what you spoke on through each topic and how that kind of helped us guide our programming from there. So the first topic was Two-Spirit LGBTQQIA+. A lot of the youth said that we can all have fluid and different identities, meaning that they can change over time relating to our gender, our sexuality, and our romantic partners. They also said that Two-Spirit individuals are some of the most sacred and powerful folks in our communities. As an umbrella term coined in the 90s, the meaning varies across individual families and nations. And then touching on menstrual wellness, youth shared that there is a need to degender the way we talk about menstruation. Not all bodies who menstruate are women. People of all genders have periods. And it is important to educate everyone about the discussion of periods to increase awareness and understanding.
Oh, there's one, okay. And then on the topics of consent and boundaries, some of the things that we heard, that it is super important to teach youth that consent is always retractable after you've given consent. Consent should be ongoing. Consent should absolutely be informed and enthusiastic. And that boundaries aren't just something that apply to romantic relationships, but they apply to any relationship that you are engaging in. With regards to sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections, some of the things that we heard were a reassurance that there is no shame or stigma in getting tested frequently, no matter what your results are. And that we need to let go of that shame, particularly in conversations with a partner, with the understanding that these conversations would be quite intimate, personal, and would require trust. Conversations with a health practitioner would be more private, involve more medical education and direct action, including prevention and treatment and testing. And then also that you have the right to advocate for non-judgmental care. And I think that's a really important one here that we really, could bold and underline and highlight when we were thinking about this work. Another point is getting tested and discussing results. This idea can also relate to the previous point, consent and boundaries, and that STBBI wellness is a part of our autonomy and overall wellness, and also just being a good community member and being healthy in community.
Speaking of community, here is a little layout of some of the communities all of the communities that we visited on our journey through this grant work. So we really tried to have a balance of rural and urban communities, understanding that, we all come from different levels of understanding in terms of these topics. So we really wanted to have everybody's voices heard. We also wanted to make sure that we were building relationships with these communities and making sure that it was reciprocal in the work that we do. Again, we didn't want to be extractive. We wanted to partner and do things in a good way. Sometimes that meant visiting communities multiple times just to build relationships before we ended up doing our workshops. That was just really important to us. And yeah, if you look at the map, you can see like where we visited and kind of some of the specific communities we did address and wanted to hear out for our work. Specifically, we tried to ensure that we were visiting First Nations folks, but also understanding that there are Métis folks that reside here, there are Inuit folks that reside here, and we just wanted to make sure that their voices were heard as well. Yeah. And here, and here are some of the folks that we visited and worked with throughout. Nikita, if you wanted to share anything about that, yeah.
I think like neither of us can not look at this screen without a big grin on our face, because we were so lucky to be held so well by so many people in all of those communities that we visited. I see Brielle there in the top left. We did some filming in Winnipeg as well, which of course didn't fit on that map. But you see some of the beautiful landscape of Haida Gwaii there in the center. You see some of the lovely Bannock babes there, which we have one with us that we will be soon introducing with the purple backgrounds. What else?
Yeah, again, we kind of met communities where they were at. And as you can see, like some of them we ended up at camp with and making pancake breakfasts for youth and aunties. That was a really good time. And it also meant doing like sexual and reproductive health workshops in a floaty on the lake too. Just that's where the kids wanted to be, so that's where we went.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think like started this program with, 7 or 8 aunties, and I left it with about 20. So I've got a whole bunch of new aunties, which is great.
Yeah, and then
Is it the next one? Okay, I think, yeah, we are at inviting the special guests that we have brought today. So we'll start with Feather, Talia. So I have like a very, very brief intro to Feather. Just personally, I'm a huge fan of the work that Feather does. She is a Treaty 4 sister with me. She made me these beautiful earrings, or she didn't make them for me. She plucked them right out of her head and gave them to me as a gift after I complimented them in the very traditional way. So I wore them for good luck today. They're a member of the Bannock Babes. They are a pride and joy of Winnipeg, Winnipeg drag scene, and they're gonna tell you some more. So hi, Feather.
Hi, everyone that's tuned in. Hi, Jacqueline. Hi, Nikita.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm also a big fan of both of your works, too.
Oh, stop. So why don't you get us started and just like tell us a little bit about yourself, tell us where you're joining us from, introduce yourself, what are your pronouns, all that stuff.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Feather Wolf. I use she, they, he pronouns in that order. I'm a two-spirit artist. I am best known as my drag alter ego, Feather Talia. But I also am avid beater, storyteller. I like to make my own clothes. I don't know. I like to do a lot of artistic things. That's not really what this is all about, but I am a drag persona that people know, sort of, I guess. Yeah. Oh, I'm from Treaty 4, Muskowgan First Nation. I'm Soto. And I'm told Sotos are the most attractive people in the world. But I reside in Winnipeg, Manitoba for the past 5 years, and I do love it, I have to say.
Yes, we moved there about the same time. Hey, and it's funny that we
Sure.
didn't really know each other in Treaty 4, but we definitely were magnets to each other as Treaty 4 sisters once we got to Winnipeg.
Yeah, literally.
So yeah, as we said, we did some filming with you, and we particularly invited you to join us to share some of the knowledge that you have through Sunshine House and your daytime job, particularly in regards to STBBI wellness. We know this now as a form of harm reduction as well, and that's a big theme that Sunshine House focuses on, as well as a community organization. So can you tell us a little bit about your role at Sunshine House and why this kind of work is important to you?
Of course. So for my work and my daily life, I am a drop-in coordinator. So I basically run the place while we're open. So we offer 2 different types of drop-ins throughout the week, with a bunch of different things happening throughout those drop-ins. But one is for people who have or are in like have to deal with houselessness, drug use, or anything that make have a little struggle. But we offer meals, harm reduction, literally anything we can. Like I would literally give some of my sweater off my back if I had to. But we also run a queer drop-in that's 2 times a week. For anyone that identifies under the queer umbrella. We are a queer and Indigenous run organization. It's kind of funny. I tell everyone that, oh, it's just an organization that's just run by a bunch of drag queens. Because it literally is. The work is important to me because I've seen well, as a queer person and being Indigenous, I have to hold 2 torches basically, that do have similar things that we have to deal with. Like some examples, being oppressed and being feared. The work that is important to me because I am a person that just loves to give back as well. I've had I've seen and experienced some of those things that Indigenous and queer people have to like deal with their young lives. And I think because I've had to deal with certain things that my life is more about giving back. So that's what I like to do. And yeah, that's a little bit what about what I do at work. I'm the boss, so not really.
No, that's great. I think it's super important for people with those lived experiences that are holding those positions. So you're, you know, so much more able to meet those community members that come in and access the services where they're at because
Mhm.
you've experienced them yourself.
Exactly.
So one of our goals with this project, with renewing an understanding of sexual and reproductive wellness is to empower Indigenous youth, especially two-spirit, trans, queer, and non-binary youth, to advocate for their own health and wellness. Can you share why STBBI wellness in particular is one of the many facets of knowledge that can be empowering for youth?
Of course. So knowing your status is so empowering because you are in control of your life and your destiny. You have the potential to change the world with that knowledge, understanding, and practices. We as two-spirit people are knowledge holders. So we are the people who are kind and caring. So we have to share what we do and who we are, which is empowering. So wait, sorry, I'm gonna read the question one more time.
Do what you gotta do.
Yeah, I don't know, just knowing your status is super empowering, like because just being able to share that is empowering.
Yes.
Yeah, basically what I was trying to say.
Great. So on that note, I mean, I feel like you and I are of a similar age. We don't need to confirm or deny that.
The young 20s, yeah.
Yes. But I feel like there was it was a very different world growing up for us. We refer to it as STIs, for example.
Mhm.
One of the sort of like aha moments, I've had many since doing this work, but one of the big aha moments that I had was how we used to hear that no news is good news, which is essentially feeding into that stigma that if you did get news, it would be bad. And you know, getting a positive result on a test is bad. So we really wanted to sort of like undo that work. And I feel like youth already are doing so much of that work and sort of that destigmatization.
Mhm.
But yeah, what are some things that you wish you were told as a young queer person, particularly in regards to STBBI wellness?
Mhm. So for me, I grew up on like in my younger years, I grew up on a reserve. And so the only like health centers that I had around me was from a small town. Um, and I don't know, it was a small, very conservative town. So one of the things that I was told as a young, I wasn't a young adult yet, I was still pretty young, but it was like, you don't need to worry about anything unless it's life threatening. And I was like, okay, well that's one of those stigmas where like we need to start, if we can get to it in a fast time, nothing could happen, right? So being told don't have to worry about it until it's like a life-threatening thing, I was like, that's not how it should be told. But that's what I was told as a young kid to my family. So I was a little bit weirded out when I was like, oh no. Well, and also like being told like, oh, if you have STBBIs, you're dirty, or
Mhm.
like told like these things, people won't want you or whatever. But I don't know, just knowing the importance of what STBBI does, and how it can affect you on your daily life is important. So that would have been
Yeah,
nice to know.
yeah. So like not a death sentence,
Yeah.
being you're dirty. I think another thing too that comes to mind for me too is just like you can almost there are a lot of STBBIs that you can almost be treated for on the spot. Like it's like it can happen quick, like treatment can happen quickly. Like it doesn't have to be this long drawn out strenuous thing. So we've
Mhm.
come a long way with the way we're able to address those concerns for sure. Okay. And then yeah, if you didn't kind of already share, is there one message you'd like to get across to Indigenous youth today?
Yes. Oh my God. Well, I hate children, but I love cheese people. Um, so I don't know. Something that like that has inspired me. Just getting to know like these two-spirit elders like in my life now in the past 5 years. It's like you are the future of our people. You can make a positive impact if you put your mind to it. You can change how we see like Western medicine with, or even with our health, like with our mental health. You can change practices and you can make them for your people. As two-spirit people, we have to take care of what we love, who we love, and how we love. And we are examples for the world that we want to be in. Be
That's-
you.
So precious, so encouraging. Thank you so much, Feather, Big Miigwech. We're honored to work with you. You bring such a light and joy to all the work that you do. And I'm so excited to share this video. You've watched it, right? This isn't
I
going to be the
did,
first
yeah.
time. Okay. It'll be the first time a lot of other people have seen it because we do have it currently like, private for now. And so it's a nice sneak peek into some of the new knowledge we're gonna be sharing.
Hi, I'm Good Medicine.
So today's topic is STIs.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Feather. In fact, the verbiage has changed, and it's in fact STBBIs, which stands for Sexually Transmitted and Bloodborne Infection. And the reason that it has changed is actually because it's a more inclusive term. So sexually transmitted infections can actually range, and there's a lot of them, which we're going to talk about today, aren't we, Feather?
Thank you so much for correcting me. Good Medicine.
We're here to learn. So, Feather, let's talk STBBIs.
There's so many out there, but we'll talk about some of the common ones, like HPV.
Genital herpes.
There's gonorrhea and chlamydia.
Syphilis.
Hepatitis.
And of course, HIV. Now, we're going to talk about what we should be on the lookout in terms of STBBIs.
There's an unusual discharge from vagina, penis, or anus.
That's true. You can also feel a pain when you're peeing, and it can be quite acute and very sensitive, or it might sort of linger.
There's lumps or skin growth on your booty.
Booty. I didn't know that. That's so good to know. I've also heard you can have a rash, and it can even be on places like your hands for things like syphilis. As well, any sort of itchy, even if there's no bumps, if you're starting to itch in your genitals or your behind, definitely check it out.
Also, while you're checking that out, check yourself out for blisters or sores.
Or warts. It's important to know your body and to stay up to date with what's going on down there.
Thank you, Good Medicine, for that. It is important to get tested every 3 to 6 months.
Yes, regular testing is so important, but it can be really daunting to say, I'm having sex and I want to get tested. But it shouldn't be that scary. There are a lot of people who care about your health and wellness. For example, you can go to a parent or an auntie or even a friend's parent or auntie, and maybe you don't feel comfortable doing that with someone in your own family, but you can go to lots of different resources. For example, you could seek out resources from First Nations Health Authority or other community organizations that might have youth wellness clinics. You can also do a quick Google search and look for youth testing or a youth nurse that might be able to help you out. It's really important that we normalize talking about STBBIs and getting tested. And Feather, I'm so excited to welcome our next guest, Vita Lamour, a sexual health outreach worker, to answer some of our questions.
Thank you so much, Vita, for being here. We really appreciate you and your knowledge.
Well, you're welcome, Feather. I'm really happy to be here.
So some questions I have. So how often should you get tested?
Well, it's really important, especially if you're sexually active, to get tested every 3 to 6 months. Well, they take 3 to 4 vials of blood, and sometimes they'll do a swab of your booty, and that's okay. And occasionally they'll even test your pee. And just so you know, you can do the swabs and the pee on your own.
If I get tested, who do I tell?
whoever you want. You're in control. So that means that no healthcare professional will disclose your information or test results.
Thank you so much, Vita, for that. I do have one more question. Why is it important to get tested?
Well, it's important because it's self-care and you gotta protect your partner and protect your community.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I am Feather Talia, and remember, snag, slay, and stay safe.
Yay. So very cute. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of giggles in there. We definitely upped the camp. I think one thing as Indigenous people do is we're always going to approach some of the heavier, more intense topics with a little bit of humor, right? That's a good way to get the message across. So yes, thank you again, Feather. I'm so excited for this to go live. And we're super grateful for all of the knowledge and humor and grace that you shared with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, see you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I feel like our next guest needs no introduction. I'm going to invite Brielle to join us. We have the pleasure of working with Brielle for some new content on the importance of Two-Spirit aunties and matriarchs in our communities. Her community work has led to a deeper understanding of what being a matriarch and an auntie means, and she does so much with humor and warmth. We really felt that in the room when Brielle was filming with us and Dr. Alex Wilson. It was, I think, a lot of what Brielle shared is still sticking with me today. So I think I'm really pleased to share Brielle with you guys as well. So Brielle, can you introduce yourself for us and tell us where you're from and where you're joining us from, and just let us know your pronouns?
Hello, everybody. I'm just going to start by introducing myself in my Cree language. Dante Brownie Sili Gasanido Oma, Nisichawaysi-ithinewuk Otse, Mena Kishtiwasai Gan Nina Nitostin, Winnipeg Nsiayan. Hello, everybody. My name is Beardy-Linklater. I come from the Nisichawaysi Cree Nation in northern Manitoba. I also come from the York Factory First Nation. I am both Rocky and Swampy Cree, Ithinewuk and Ininewuk. I am joining you from my apartment in central Winnipeg, Treaty 1 territory, close to Sunshine House, actually. I live really close to Sunshine House. Yeah, so happy to be here and just listening to Feather and listening to the work that Indigenous Health and Wellness, is that the acronym? Did I get it right? Because I'm very backwards and I will say like yeah, I sometimes scramble acronyms. But yeah, no, it's really awesome to be here and really excited.
Yay, we're so excited to have you. We had such a great time with you in Winnipeg, especially even after when we went to the spaghetti factory. That was so funny.
Oh yeah, we had a time.
I'm just going to move on to our first question for you, and that is one factor we wanted to expand is our understanding of matriarchs in community. Can you share a little bit about your community work that has led you to being a leader for Two-Spirit, Trans, Queer, and non-binary Indigenous youth?
So the work that I've been doing is span across like my life. So from like being really, I would say that I was introverted as a child who had the desire to be like extroverted. So the things that I did were like extracurriculars. I joined my high school's Youth Aboriginal Council, it was called, and that's what led me into doing like volunteer work, really having a pride in my Indigenous identity. And it's kind of started there in high school, just, you know, my love for like community work. And it started with community feast because I spent a lot of times like serving our houseless population in the north, because who my family was just people who happened to end up like, you know, in poverty, no place to go. So I found working with the houseless community a way that I would also maintain my relationship with both like my Cree relatives and also later in life my transgender relatives. So it's kind of what led me to where I am today and shaped who I am largely, because as I've gone forward in time, a lot of my work has been around advocacy and fighting for things that our people have been denied, whether that's systemically or in matters of justice. Feel like that's kind of always where I've been pulled through. It's just like, hey, there's this thing that's happening and it's not right. So let me just lend my big voice and my big energy to these causes. And that's where it really began. And I think like one of the first causes that ever really prompted me to do something was the national crisis in Attawapiskat, because as a Cree youth, I felt very compelled and actually go find out that I actually have like lineage to that community because my family comes from Ontario. My dad's half of his family. So it's just like I feel very compelled to like the calls to action throughout my life. And then I don't know more happened when I was in high school, when I was, you know, a young youth that's hilarious. When I was a youth, when I was a youth and young. Um and like yeah. So like I don't know more, and it just feels like that period in time prepared me to be who I am today. It's like it kind of went from there. And then 2014 I transitioned. So like I chose to become Brielle, and around 2013 is when I started to like fully live like every day as a trans woman. Whereas like high school I kind of was in and out of it. But like when I became an adult, I was like, well, this is gonna be the way that I choose to be. So around that time that I was transitioning, I had joined forces with other local queers in Northern Manitoba, and we started our first Pride entity. We called it Pride North of 55, so that it could be inclusive to all the communities, not just our community, but all the communities in Northern Manitoba, because we wanted to have Pride celebrations. And we had dance parties, we had festivals, we had education series, and it was really like really like what led me to kind of be like this event organizer, because I've never done anything like that. So hosting dance parties, putting on festivals, putting on conferences, bringing in speakers and educators, those were all things that led me to being like, oh yeah, the main part too was like we brought really 5 amazing drag queens. I think Vita was one of them. I'm almost certain Vita was one of them. We brought 5 drag queens from Winnipeg to our north, and then that kind of like the snowball into my love for drag, because I used to do drag in high school actually, and that's what led me to transition, as like me doing these tutorials, and I would do talent shows, and then like I just became Brielle through that avenue. And there was so much things that happened from like the Pride, and then I moved here to Thompson. So 2017 happened, and I was asked, not asked, I actually applied, and then I got asked. I gotta watch my words here. Sometimes I do that with my storytelling. I embellish details, and I gotta catch myself. I was like, wait, girl, you're live. There's people listening. So I applied for this national opportunity to be one of the 338 daughters of the vote that would sit in our House of Commons in Ottawa, in our lovely colonial government. So I got to actually sit in the seat for Churchill-Kiwatinook askeh, and I was the member of parliament for a day. And in all of history, we don't have any trans women that have ever sat as an elected official. Not that I was elected, but for one day I got to be that symbolic representation. And then it really launched me into the role of advocacy for real. And I got to travel all over Canada, you know, meeting with people who work with transgender youth, and whether that looks like healthcare, whether that looks like child welfare, education. And I've gotten to consult and to facilitate events, to be a speaker at so many places. And I take my work to First Nations communities. I take my work to the inner city, which is why I always shout out the inner city, because it doesn't get a lot of love. And I feel like a lot of our most brilliant artists live and work in the inner city. And I get to like collaborate and be in community with these people too. And I get a lot of my like heart work, and I get a lot of my teachings from them as well. And finally, to bring it up, like I started working for my dad's community, York Factory First Nation. So I got to create some education materials and got to lift my pipe for the first time in that community. And it was said that I was one of like the first people to lift a pipe on that land in a very, very long time who was Two-Spirit. So I felt very good about that. And, you know, like I carry a lodge. I also do Two-Spirit sharing circles and full moon ceremony for Indigenous youth, for my female community members. I hold this lodge to you know, to bring us together to keep this way of life going and forward. So I carry a really big role as a matriarch and auntie, and as like it's like as time moves on, that work is ever evolving and ever changing depending on what the needs are, I find. So that kind of sums up some of what I do.
So much, so incredible. I really, really admire you. You've also become a support person for many youth in community, urban and rural, and have become an auntie in your community. Can you share what being an auntie means to you and some of the influences that aunties have had in your journey?
So for me, like being an auntie kind of just happened overnight. Like I've always had like this, you know, nurturing role. Like I've taken care of my sister's kids, my cousin's kids. So it's just always come naturally to me. And teaching that was given to me was by Albert McLeod, and that like some of the more feminine people in the community would take this role on as like early as a kid. And that's kind of what I was doing. So as I gotten older, it kind of just became natural to me to guide the young ones. And only in my late 20s, and people in their early 20s always look up to me and they call me auntie. And I'm like, I'm not even like 30 yet. I'm like already getting called auntie by people who are like not even like 5 years younger than me. I'm like, why am I auntie? But I really feel like it's because of the lack of like the trans and queer aunties. Like we have to acknowledge that the AIDS epidemic took a lot of like really, really beautiful people from us and from our community. So there is a large gap noticeably within like that role of like queer and trans aunties. So I took a lot from my history books and I looked like, you know, to people like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson for inspiration. And, you know, I've read some of their work and the groundbreaking work that they've done with queer youth in New York. And I've always thought to myself, well, like that is the standard for me, is that I got to be that way with my Native and Indigenous youth. I have to be, you know, so loving and compassionate. And it's been really hard though, because like the traumas that we face as Indigenous peoples are very like can be horrifying at times. And I feel like that is why we're so loving, and that is why we're so humorous, and that is why we're so culturally connected, because it is those things that contain like different elements that will help us heal and live a good life. And feel like some of those things I do have to embody as a woman, as an auntie, is, you know, sometimes I have to sacrifice. Sometimes I have to put aside my own personal pain and trauma so that I can make space for somebody who's younger than me, who might not have the knowledge on how to survive just yet and how to hold space for that pain and trauma. We learn that a lot of younger trans girls are going through what I've gone through already, and knowing that I've gone through it and have survived it, I have to be strong and resilient and hold on to those youth and like put my arms around them and say, it's okay, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna be loved. You're loved right now. And you will have community, family, you will have a loved one, you'll have several loved ones. And I have to constantly put it in their heads that this life was meant for them too, because I know exactly what it felt like to come up in a world that didn't make me feel like I belonged in it. But what I did was I always told myself, like, yes, you belong in this world. You just have to make your place in it. And the only way you can do that is by walking your path. And I can't walk my path if I'm, you know, stuck in a place. I have to push myself forward. And there really wasn't a lot of people who pushed me forward. I can say that in terms of aunties and matriarchs, because I felt like I was lacking those. But I had like really incredible like Native women on my journey, whether they were sisters, whether they were literal aunties. Like there was always somebody to guide me. Like when I was younger, we went to ceremonies and I wasn't like always the most comfortable being in like men's spaces. So those aunties would have me sitting on the women's side with them. And it was those aunties that kind of like, you know, those qualities are what stuck with me. You know, when I thought about all the times I was either ostracized or like excluded, I thought about all the people who brought me in. So like people like Gail Pruden. When I think of Gail Pruden, I think of her because of my relationship with Powwow and how she literally was just this like I didn't really know her. I just went and approached her and I was like, you look so beautiful in your regalia. She's like, do you want to dance? I was like, yeah. She pushes me into the damn circle. That's how I became a powwow dancer. It's because of Gail Pruden. And like I was like, okay, I see you. She literally sees two-spirit and trans people and then finds them and brings them in. So now I kind of do that a little bit. I'm a little bit more gentle because I'm more aware that people are socially anxious as hell and that you shouldn't put them in front of a crowd of people, but I survived. So it's just like leading by like how people, when people have showed me kindness, I have adopted that same kindness and brought it forward with me.
Aw, yeah, that's such big elder auntie energy to just throw you in. Yeah, I totally relate to that. And I know you touched on it a little bit while you were speaking, but what is one thing that you wish you could tell your younger self?
Telling my younger self, I think my younger self needed to be told it's okay. It's okay. I felt like things like my emotions, my feelings, and my thoughts were too much for me to handle, and that other people wouldn't handle. It's okay to ask for space. It's okay to say no. It's okay to have boundaries, I think. In this the grand scheme of things, boundaries is a really good teaching. And I feel like because I didn't know that I was allowed to have boundaries in terms of like, my capacity and my people pleasing in other areas of my life. I wish I would have known that, boundaries where I was allowed to have them. And I think all youth and kids need to know that too, that they need to honor their own capacities, they need to honor their body sovereignties, and they need to stand firmly in their autonomy and use their voice and say no. If you feel like you can't do it, say no. Also, you might hear kids because I just got new neighbors and I'm not used to having kids, and I live in a really, 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 really ghetto house and the walls are thin. So I hear my neighbors really clearly. So you might hear them.
I don't hear anything, so you're good.
I don't know if you heard the door slamming, but that was them.
You better go auntie them then.
I guess we'll jump right into your videos. I really enjoyed sitting in on your recording. I think you could hear us like bursting out laughing at one because something that was so funny. So we're just gonna jump right into those. Bear with me for a moment while I
While she finds those, I'll just share a quick note too that Brielle, you sat in conversation with Dr. Alex Wilson for, I think we have, almost an hour of footage. And it's just like saturated with so much knowledge. Like it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. And I know that there's like a lot of people that were really eager to see the final of that video, which we will share eventually. Obviously it's a bit long to share today. So we have some very cute snippets of you that we're really excited to share.
I became an auntie. It was like a generational shift. All of a sudden, I'm a youth. The next time, an auntie. I started noticing like the children that I saw as babies were becoming youth. So that meant that, naturally a youth was becoming an adult, and I started, taking myself, a little bit more seriously, started to, watch how I speak, watch how I carry myself, and then was just like, there's this whole new generation of people looking up to me. Now I have this unwavering like feeling of like, I gotta be like, deadly, and I gotta be like the aunties who, took care of me, and, I gotta now step into that role. And it just felt like, it did feel so natural. It felt comfortable too, because it's just, showing love to those who are, young and in need of nurturing and support, and, and it's being that for them, and it's showing them that, love can look like a queer trans person, and, that's what I wish I had. So now I get to be the thing that I didn't have for a whole new generation of youth. So one day I became an auntie. It was like a generational shift. A matriarch is somebody who looks after her community, who puts others before herself, who sees something that needs to be done and does it because she knows, you know, her place in this world. No. And also, she has a deadly laugh. She laughs at herself when she takes herself too seriously.
We're like,
Oh my God. You know what? I burst out laughing because what I just said sounded so patriarchal. And I was trying to be like, we know our place in the world. And I was like, I have such a deep voice. Like, if you take out the video, it sounds like I'm like, you know, taken so badly out of context. I was trying to be like, we know where we stand in this world. Like, we're matriarch, we're bosses. But then it's like, no, it literally sounds like I'm saying we belong in the kitchen or something.
but I think like the way that you catch yourself in that moment, it's like pretty apparent that you like realize that, and then the laugh, like it's like the laugh, and then you can hear us laughing in the background. Like I can't watch that video without having just the big grin on my face. It's so funny, and it would honestly, it like has the vibe of almost like a blooper, but it's just too good that we're like, we're gonna keep it.
I love that you kept that in. I wanted to make a little, it's not even that it's not even that important, but that purse that it's conveniently placed to me, my fit today is inspired by that. So I have the pink and white, so like
Oh, cute. Yes, you
Aw.
coordinated.
yeah.
Very cute. Well, thank you, Brielle, again for trusting us with your knowledge sharing and with you know, your voice and your wisdom. We're super grateful for all that you contributed to this project. I know that like if we did this again next year, you'd have like a whole brand new sort of like breadth of knowledge to bring to the table. So should we ever get another grant, we'll be calling you again because you are that person that has those 2 feet on the ground in community. You are a sponge to, again, like what the needs are of the youth for the community that you serve. So we're so grateful that you could help guide us in this work too. Miigwech, and we'll see you around Winnipeg.
Yes.
Okay, bye. All right, so that brings us to the end of our launch. We're so grateful for everyone that is watching or will watch in the future. This was a lot of hard work for Jacqueline and I and the rest of our team. And you know, sitting down and reflecting, it all happened so fast. The year flew by. We were zipping around all over the province, and to sort of sit down and sort of reflect on that and look back has been really special to me. And I'm just so happy for everyone to see it all in its entirety once we have all of our new knowledge incorporated into the brand new Ask Auntie and Cuystwi trainings. Closing words from you?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed the process of going to communities, being in community, working with all these incredible people on all of these events and filming and whatnot. It was a lot of learning, not just for like, we learned a lot, and we learned a lot from the youth that we worked with. I'm forever grateful for them and the knowledge that they shared. I'm forever grateful for Health Canada for giving us this grant and allowing us to be able to do this kind of work. You know, community is so important to us, and working communally with communities is really important to us. And yeah, I'm just really happy to share it with everybody.
Agreed. Thanks again, everyone. You can find us on Instagram at
Indigenous Youth Wellness, and you can find us on Facebook at Cuystwi. Maybe I'll type it in the chat right now.
Follow along, and yes, absolutely feel free to bring a Cuystwi or Ask Auntie curriculum training to your community and make sure that you're bringing the youth up and uplifting them and empowering them in their journey for sexual and reproductive wellness.
Yeah, and if you have any questions regarding running these in your community, please feel free to send us an email at cuystwi@phsa.ca, and we would be happy to connect you with our curriculum. It's not quite live on the training, but if you're interested, it should be in the near future.